Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be looking at a rather strange item, and it's going to be on a rather strange character. It is called the Demon Machine Chu-Ko-Nu. I always used to get this wrong when I was younger. I used to always call it the Chu-Nu-Ko or Chu-Ko-Nu, or it was stupid. Chu-Ko-Nu, which I'm sure translates to something specific. Sounds like it's probably a Chinese word, now that I think about it. I wonder. Let's do a small amount of research, shall we? The repeating crossbow, Chinese, also known as the repeater crossbow, is the romanized Chu-Ko-Nu due to its association with the Three Kingdoms arrow strategist Zhuge Liang. It was a crossbow invented during the Warring States period of China that combined the bow, spanning, bolt, and placing and shooting actions in one motion. So I was right. It is a Chinese crossbow during the Warring States period. Interesting. So this particular bow has some very interesting effects, and it may not seem like much right off the top of the bat, but I'm going to tell you, it's actually a very, very nice crossbow. It has some very specific uses, and we'll go over what those uses are as we go along. But first, let's take a look at the stats. So we have a 31 to 137 damage, which isn't really that high. I mean, most crossbows and bows tend to have a relatively low damage, and as you can see, our physical damage here is not particularly high. Let me just go ahead and make sure I have all my equipment off. So we only have 77 to 342, so a relatively low physical damage for this bow. And this is important because you're not really wearing this for the physical damage, and that's the important thing. So you have to keep that in mind as you take a look at this bow. We also have a dexterity requirement of 95 and a strength requirement of 80, which are both particularly high, especially since a lot of the times this gets used on a non-Amazon character. It is a level requirement of only 49, which is not bad, and it can be used relatively early on in pretty much any character's career, so to speak. We also have fires, explosive, arrows, or bolts. And I always thought this was just silly because they never told you what it actually does. And you have to look up every single item to figure this out. So this particular item gives you level 6 explosive bolts. Basically what this is, it is the Amazon skill exploding arrow. And it's essentially given to you for free when you fire your bow. So, for instance, if I were just to walk out here and I would use the regular attack, when I fire an attack, it is going to come out as an explosive arrow. And when it hits a target, it will have a nice little explosion. Exploding arrow has a damage radius of 3 yards, which is relatively far, and it will hit pretty much every monster within that 3 yards. Even like right to the very edges of it. So what does this one do? Well, on Demon Machine, you get a level 6 exploding arrow, which is a 65% attack rating bonus. It is also a 27 to 31 fire damage, which is relatively nothing, and of course there's no mana cost because it's a free skill. It's given to you when you fire your regular attacks. Now, the really cool thing about this is that you have to add the attack rating on to what you've got. So right now I have 1,352 attack rating, so I'm going to have to add 65%, or sorry, 56% to that. No, 65%. So 65% to that, because it's not going to show on the character screen, because that skill is not being shown at all. It's just showing me my regular attack rating. Also, the other interesting thing about Exploding Arrow is that Exploding Arrow will transfer all fire damage that you have to the attack. Alright? And what this means is not just simply that when you have fire damage and you shoot a bow at somebody, that the monster will take the fire damage from the hit. No. What this means is that any fire damage that you have will add to the explosion as well. So if I'm running, say, 1,000 fire damage on my attacks or my abilities or my charms or or items or whatever I've got going, if it adds up to 1,000, that 1,000 is applied directly to the explosive arrow and the explosion of the explosive arrow, which means it multiplies any fire damage you get by 2 and has an AoE effect, which is really, really cool. These things can be used in combination with skills like Enchant. So if you take a look, I have a relatively high Enchant right now, which is level 25, and it has 851 to 1,068 fire damage. I also have Fire Mastery, and Fire Mastery increases all fire damage that I expel by 198%, and this includes skill-based fire damage and fire damage that is obtained through abilities, items, charms. It doesn't matter. Whatever fire damage I have is going to be increased by 198%. And this includes Holy Fire Aura from the Dragon Plate. So as you can see, I have the Dragon Plate on, and that gives me some Holy Fire as well, which is pretty cool. This is not particularly the best plate to use on this build. It's just one that I had laying around, and I thought it would be cool to add into it. So, so what does this mean? Well, it means that if you're going to be a Enchantress, which is what I would call it, you're going to probably use a Demon Machine or a very similar bow. There are other bows out there that you can use. One of the popular versions, I believe, is the what is it? The Chu-Ko-Nu. There's also Blood-Raven's Charge, the Brand Bow, Hellcast, and Ravenclaw. They all have various levels of exploding arrow. But there's a reason why I prefer this one in particular when I'm building an Enchantress, and I'll go over that. So let's go ahead and enchant ourselves real quick. And now you can see we're doing 3,184 to 4,334, which is a rather large amount of fire damage. But here's the thing. That's not enough. All right. In Hell difficulty, if that was all you were doing, that would not be enough. But what's going on here is it's a multiplicative formula. And for this reason, I want to bring up a calculator. I know, I love calculators. So here's my calculator, and let me move this over just a little bit so you guys can see it a little bit better. Too many windows in OBS. I need to clean this up. Give me calculator. I believe it's this one. All right, here we go. All right, so let's run a little thought process formula, shall we? So this is not all fire damage, so we cannot count all of this. There was a little bit of physical damage in there, so let's just round it down to 4,000 because we knew the physical damage wasn't really that high. All right, so we are dealing 4,000 fire damage, roundabout, to a target when we hit it. All right, so that's the first thing you've got to add. So we've got 4,000 fire damage on hit. All right, then you've got the explosion. And the explosion is also applying 4,000 fire damage. All right, so we've got to add another 4,000. So we've got 8,000 damage. Now, you can also apply things like Pierce. Now, Pierce is the ability for the arrow to go through and hit another target. All right. Now, granted, when you hit another target, you're not dealing 4,000 damage to the same target twice. Because, you know, it's going through him, it's hitting the one behind him, and it's dealing 4,000 damage to him. But it's still another 4,000 damage added onto this equation. How many times can you pierce? The answer is if you have 100% pierce, I believe the limit is 4 times, although I could be wrong about that. I haven't looked it up in a little while. So let's assume that you have a tightly grouped cluster of 20 or 30 monsters, and they're all together, like you're in the cow level, right? And so you fire your bow, and your bow hits 4 targets. So that's 4,000 times 4, right? So so we've got 4,000 times 4. So that is your initial fire damage piercing through, okay? But then we also have another 4,000 damage, which is going in a 3-meter radial effect to all monsters nearby. Right? So we've got this cluster of cows. How many cows are in this cluster? Let's just pretend there are 20 cows in this really tight cluster that you've made. Maybe they're focused on your Valkyrie, or maybe they're focused on your mercenary or your golem or whatever the hell is going on. Whatever you've got going on, they're focused on something. So they're all clustered together. So you've done 16,000 damage just by piercing through the targets, but then you have these explosions, and there's 4 explosions at the bare minimum because you've got 100% pierce, and that's 4,000 damage to 20 monsters, right? So we've got to do 4,000 times 20 times 4, which is 320,000 damage plus the 16,000 initial impact, which is around 336,000 damage if you get your pierces right, if you've got the correct equipment, if you've got your enchant up, things like that. And this is mediocre enchant, by the way. Now, granted, you do need attack rating to make this work, but the beautiful thing about enchant is it gives a rather large amount of attack rating, so it's going to help solve at least some of those issues. Now, where are you going to get your piercing? Well, we're moving on to that. So the next effect on here, as you can see, is it just says piercing attack. Nothing else, just piercing attack. And what is that percentage? Well, that is also something that is not told to you. So if you are interested in finding out what the piercing attack is of a particular bow, you've got to look up the bow. This particular one is 66%, which is relatively high. And if you combine it with the razor tail, which is 33%, you will have 99%, which is practically 100. The other bows and things like that do have pierce are various numbers. Like, for instance, Storm Strike is 25%, Razor Tail is 33%, Gut Siphon is 33%, Doomslinger is 35%, Vidala's Rig set is 50%. The reason why I actually don't prefer to use Chu-Ko-Nu is because Chu-Ko-Nu is only 50%. I would prefer, if I'm building an Enchantress, I want that 100% pierce. And there's only 2 ways that you can get 100% pierce with items and no skills. And those 2 ways are the Demon Machine and the Razor Tail Belt, which will pretty much give you 100%. It's 99%, so effectively 100. We also have the Buriza do Canyon, which gives you 100% pierce. Now, the Buriza do Canyon is an interesting choice for a Enchant Sorceress, but it doesn't have the exploding arrows, which it really needs. It's a decent choice for some other characters who may be building differently. But we really need the pierce and the fire explosive bolts together to make this work. And Demon Machine has both the pierce, 66%, and the fire explosive arrow. In fact, let me go grab a razor tail for this particular experiment, just so that I can really show you what it does. I have a razor tail on a bow and spear, I'm fairly certain. Mr. Bowen Spear, he's using the razor tail for the piercing attack as well. I've got a lot of requests for runeword video. Unique item videos, by the way. And I know I haven't finished my runeword set. I'm still working on that. So there are a lot of videos coming up really soon on items that have been requested. The Demon Machine was actually one that was requested, by the way. All right, so let's go ahead and put this razor tail on our girl. Now, do keep in mind that if you do an Enchantress build, it is important to remember that you want to beef up your enchant as much as possible, as high as possible. You're going to probably want to put on plus skill equipment on your offset. You probably are going to want to find like a +2 Sorceress, +3 enchant orb. You're going to want to like get fire skill or charms just so that you can have extra enchant that you probably won't even use while you're actually running. But you're going to use them to actually enchant yourself, because the higher level your enchant gets, the more attack rating you're going to get, the more fire damage you're going to get, and the more multiplicative it becomes. The multiplicative damage, which is very similar to Lightning Fury, if you guys have ever played Lightning Fury, Azan, that's exactly the way this works, is you are deliberately creating a situation where the little micro explosions are piercing and exploding and doing more damage, and the more targets you have, the faster things will die, which is exactly what you want. All right, so now we have our piercing settled out, and the next effect on this thing is 123% enhanced damage, which does not vary. We have 66 to maximum damage, which does not vary. We also have 321 to defense, which I don't really know why it has defense on it, but I'm not going to complain about it. It certainly is nice to have defense wherever you can get it. And plus 36 to mana, which is, it's almost like they knew an Enchantress was going to use this bow. On top of that, we also have a socket, and it is important to note that that the socket is probably going to be a shale rune. You really need speed to make this work, and that is the most important thing when it comes to this build. And I don't know if I have a shale rune just laying around. I actually do have a specific character just for gems and runes. Let me see if he's got a shale rune laying around. He probably does.
Good day. Well,
all right, there we go. We got one shale. Let's go ahead and throw that shale rune. And let's grab some upgrade runes, because we're going to upgrade this. I'm going to grab 2 sets of upgrade runes, because I don't remember which one it is. And some diamonds, just in case. Because it's either diamond or emerald. It's one or the other. Or armor / weapon, and I never remember which one, because I'm a spaz. Alright, she is only capable of normal difficulty. This is quite sad. This is very sad. I would like to test this out and actually show it to you. So I'm going to have to put this on a different sorceress. I do have another sorceress, I believe. So let me put the 2 items in the stash here. So what we really need is my Enchant Sorceress, which I'm pretty sure is around here somewhere. I actually made one back before Diablo 2 Resurrected dropped, and it was just a relatively fun thing to do. Enchant Sorceresses can kill pretty well. They do have a pretty high difficulty when it comes to fire immunes. As you most likely know, fire immunes tend to be relatively ferocious in hell difficulty, and you come across a large number of them, and you need another way to dish out the damage other than
I can't use
the specific effects. Alright, so she's not high enough level to actually run this yet, and I'm going to do some quick editing, and I'm going to give her the level and stats so she can run at Demon Machine, which is only level 49, so it's not much of a challenge here, and I'll be right back. Alright, so here we are back with Flaming Cheeto, and she's got a little bit of an upgrade now, so she can utilize the equipment which we wanted her to utilize. Alright, so she needs some bolts. And a pink. Alright, let's give her some bolts. She's going to enchant herself, obviously. And if I remember correctly, she had... oh no, she doesn't have a buff stick. Sadness. No buff stick, but that's okay. Alright, so we're only running 1,832 to 2,715 damage. Our skills are not really that high. I threw a bunch of stat points in there just so that she could actually hit things. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how the explosive arrow multiplies the damage and how it actually works fairly well. Of course, first thing we come across is a bunch of fire immune spear cats. So when you attack one target, the damage is not going to be that great. But what happens is when you attack a tightly clustered pack of monsters, the damage will multiply out and do a pretty massive amount. And the really cool thing about this is that the more damage you have, the more it multiplies, to the point of almost insanity. Because you're talking about 4 procs, you're talking about an explosive effect, you're talking about multiple targets nearby, and all of the above comes down to a pretty massive amount of just explosive damage. This particular character actually was an explosive sorceress. That's why I named her Flaming Cheeto, and the Flaming Cheeto actually did fairly well all the way up to Nightmare difficulty. I actually didn't finish her. The point that you really need to look at, though, is focusing the damage. So when you have a group of monsters, you want to get them clustered. And when you cluster them, you'll notice that the damage will go up exponentially as you get them in a nice, tight cluster. And unfortunately, these guys are all fire immune, which is not helpful to my demonstration. But these guys are not. So I want to get them in a nice cluster. I want to angle my attacks so that I can make sure that I'm hitting the most targets possible. Because the radius of the explosion is only 3 yards, you want to make sure they're really close together when you fire your arrow as well. So you're gonna, if you do this build, you're gonna become very good at herding monsters together. You want to herd them as close together as possible so that the explosions are overlapping, and you're getting a multiplication effect. If you're just firing this at one target, it's not going to do very, very well. And this is like the mantra of the Amazon. Whether you're an ice Amazon, whether you're an exploding arrow Amazon, whether you're an immolation arrow Amazon, there are so many multiplicative effects when it comes to pierce, combined with small explosions, which you have to focus the monsters in a nice little zone. Another good side effect of having a skill like this is that when you go to a zone like, say, Maggot Lair, and you fire your arrow down a hallway, you're going to notice that it's going to do a significant amount of damage to everything in this zone, because places like Maggot Lair, the monsters are already tightly packed for you, and you don't really have to worry too much about this whole, hey, how do I get them to herd how I want them to herd together? You don't have to worry about that, because they're already nice and herded for you. So when you fire your bow in the Maggot Lair, it's just beautiful, awesome carnage. And I'm going to go find the Maggot Lair real quick, and we're going to go in there, and I'm going to show you this beautiful, awesome carnage. The point of these videos is really to show you how these weapons work, what they're good at, what specific uses they have. A lot of people will pick up a weapon, but they won't specifically know what the weapon is good for. And this is really what this video is about, is what is this weapon good for? So let's see if we can find a nice cluster of monsters. And as you can see here, here's a nice cluster. They're already all grouped together for me, and I was able to take them out relatively quickly. Now keep in mind that the other sorceress that we were looking at, the one that actually had maximum level enchant and maximum level warmth and so forth and so on, and with plus to skills and all the other nice effects, she had like 4,000 enchant damage. And this can be stacked with other effects, like you could be wearing a dream helmet for lightning damage. You can be using a bunch of fire damage charms or lightning damage charms. You can stack in other elements for more damage on the initial hit. You can also run your static to lower down their HP before you get in there and actually fight them. Another thing that you can do, which a lot of people don't realize when it comes to these abilities, and this applies to Freezing Arrow, this applies to Fireball, this applies to Exploding Arrow, Immolation Arrow, Lightning Fury. I don't know if I already said Lightning Fury. But it's firing your attack specifically at a wall. So if I'm fighting monsters and there is a wall nearby, I can fire my arrow at the wall for a second explosion. So essentially what happens is your arrow pierces through the target, and you get that initial explosion upon contact with the monster, which applies your fire damage, which is very nice, and it also applies your fire damage again in the explosion. But the cool thing is that if you fire and you hit the wall, you get another explosion. Now, you don't get any more fire damage applied on the impact, because of course you impacted the wall, but the explosion is a radial effect, and you can multiply your damage out like this. So attacking in these directions specifically to make sure that your arrow is hitting the wall is actually extremely effective. And as you can see, in Hell difficulty, with a subpar setup, running a demon machine and a razor tail, I am able to effectively kill just about everything in Maggot Lair because of the clustering effect. And if you are a Fire Amazon, an Ice Amazon, if you are a Enchantress like this, keep that in mind when you're thinking about places to farm. because Maggot Lair is actually a pretty nice area to farm for runes, and you could come into the Maggot Lair with your very awesome explosive arrows and just moida. So we're going to look at one last thing before we close out this video, and it is upgrading the bow. So if you were serious about this particular build, you would most likely want to upgrade the bow. And to do this, you're going to need, I'm pretty sure it's a, God bless it, I'm pretty sure it's a ko and a lem. I could be wrong on this. And I want to say it's a, is it an emeralds? God bless it. It's been a little while since I looked up this recipe. Give me just a second. Sorry, lumpul. I was thinking of the armor recipe. That's what I was thinking of. Lumpul is the recipe. So we've got 31 to 137, 95 dex, 80 strength, and 49 level requirement with a very fast attack speed. And it goes to a 57 to 155. Not a huge upgrade there. 98 dexterity at 141 strength, a level 70 requirement with a very fast attack speed. So let's go ahead and grab the shell rune. Let's go ahead and put our bolts back in there. Where did I put my bolts? And let's play around this one more time with the upgraded version. Now, the interesting thing about the upgraded version is that it's not really a huge upgrade, and it does have a pretty massive stat increase. I mean, you're talking about 141 strength. That's a pretty high strength number for a character that's not really a strength class. But increasing the physical damage is going to give you some benefits. So most notably, increasing the physical damage is going to allow you to have more lifesteal, which is definitely nice. It's also going to give you an ability to restore your mana if you want mana steal. Now, the silly thing about the mana predicament is that since your character isn't specifically using any spells for the most part, you know, just simply using your armor and your enchant, you don't really have to worry about it too much. For what spells you do use, it could come in handy, but you could also simply build energy shield just so you can have a way to become more tanky. There are a lot of different paths that you can take as an Enchant Sorceress, and it's a very interesting way to play. And let's bump this up to /players8. We might as well, since we're already here. And let's see how she does against the players 8. Now, she's not really mid-maxed out yet, but as you can see, when the monsters are tightly packed like that, although I think I seem to remember something about monsters needing to spawn at players 8. So let's get to the next level real quick, shall we? And we'll test it on the next level. Need some potions. I'm firing at the corner, trying to get them before they come around. Let me go down and get some potions before I die.
Tell me your troubles.
Welcome.
I do want to make an enchantress again. It's been a little while. So let's get to the next level so we can test out this player's 8, shall we? Alright, so these monsters are freshly spawned since no one has been in this zone, so they should be players 8. So we need that multiplicative damage. We need them to focus up. That's the key here. It's not attacking them one by one. It's making sure we've got multiple pierces, multiple explosions, and I need to reposition. Let's go somewhere where I can get a nice healthy chunk of monsters. There we go. We've got 4 explosions in a row. Actually, that was actually not bad at all for 4 explosions. Let me angle this a little differently so I'm getting the explosion off the wall. That'll double my damage. There's a nice little healthy chunk of monsters. Ooh, look at that beautiful little chunk of monsters. Look at all those beautiful explosions. This is where something like this really shines, is in the killing of multiple monsters. This particular type of scenario too, like where you're trying to kill like a large number of small HP monsters in rapid success, and of course this is player's 8, so do keep that in mind. But you know, if this character were a little bit better min-maxed, if she had the right equipment, she wouldn't have any trouble in player's 8. It's already doable. Like, it's doable, but I mean, look at the equipment she's wearing. She's wearing an Angelic Mantle, some Saigon's Gauntlets for the IAS. She's got on Angelic for some attack rating, which is nice. Don't get me wrong, the attack rating is a nice little bonus. And she does actually need attack rating, so do keep that in mind. And she's wearing Saigons with you know, like Angelic Wing rings. None of the charms that she's got on are particularly good. She could be running Fire Charms. She could be running Skillers. She could be beefing up her enchant more. She has no resistances. And this is a character who's already doing fairly well in Hell difficulty without any real equipment whatsoever. It's pretty much just enchant, fire mastery, warmth, a demon machine crossbow, and razor tail. That's literally like the breadth of what she has going on for her right now. Well, I've prattled on for quite some time with this video, and I think this is long enough. Thanks for watching, and keep watching.